Initially, this video was supposed to be about the Empire State Building, but then two things happened. One, I found out that the Empire State Building is not a good enough topic to make an entertaining video on, and two, I learned that the Empire State Building had an airship dock built onto it. This got me really thinking about airships, and I learned about two airships that the Navy had in the 1930s, and that was far more interesting to make a video about. So here we are. Since third grade, I've always been fascinated with airships, probably because I read the Hindenburg I Survived book and started thinking about how cool it would be to be on an airship. Not the Hindenburg, though. In the early days of Playhouse Films, when we were called Playhouse Comics, and this YouTube channel didn't exist, I drew a picture of the Playhouse Comics airstrip, and all of my employees were like, "Oh my god, we should fly over a football game and watch it." This is important for no reason at all. I just like telling stories about my life. Anyways, back to whatever this video is about. In World War I, the German Zeppelin Company created airships for the German army, which they used to bomb London. The Entente also used airships to bomb Germany, as well as for reconnaissance purposes. These recon ships also gave rise to the first aircraft carriers, where airships were put on the backs of battleships and launched at sea for reconnaissance and scouting. After the war, airships were used for passenger travel and the like, but they were also still used militarily. The Goodyear Corporation, who as we know are pretty experienced in building airships, designed a new type of airship called ZRS-4. The ship is also notable for two reasons. One, it was the largest airship ever built at that time, and it also featured a hangar inside the aircraft, which carried 5 small Curtiss F-9C Sparrowhawk fighters. These fighters were terrible for the job because they had abysmal downward visibility, which, if you're using the plane for reconnaissance, which in this case the Navy was, then it is a terrible choice. The only reason these were used is that they were the smallest fighters around at the time. Come on, you guys built one of the best fighter aircraft ever in history in a few months. You're telling me that you can't build a tiny fighter that you can actually see out of? The airship was finished in 1930 and flew her maiden voyage a year later. The Navy named it the USS Akron after the place where it was built, in Akron, Ohio. Only in Ohio. Don't even start. After a few more years of tests, the Akron had her first mission, a search for some destroyers as a part of an exercise. She ran some more missions, and the Navy took notice. They expressed interest in the Akron and her sister ship, the Macon, which wasn't completed yet, for use as reconnaissance vessels launching parasite fighters. On May 3, 1932, while being watched by a crowd of spectators, the aircraft launch and retrieval system was tested. Launching the fighters was pretty straightforward. Just send a plane with its engine running out of the vessel, it gains speed as it falls, and boom, you have a flying aircraft carrier. Retrieving these planes, however, would be more difficult. To fix this, engineers devised a trapeze system to grab and retrieve the planes and pull them back into the hangar. Both ships had this implemented. These ships flew regular reconnaissance missions along the Pacific and Atlantic coasts, but never served in World War II. Why? Well, because they crashed. The Akron went down off the coast of California after a thunderstorm forced it downwards into the ocean. This wasn't even the first time it crashed. In 1931, the Akron was whipped around by a wind gust. The tail dipped and crushed the lower tail fin, and in 1932, an updraft forced the ship upwards, carrying 3 men with it on ropes.
Only 3 of the landing crew were yanked into the air. A gust of wind had carried the huge airship aloft with its unexpected passengers. Horror swept the men on the ground as one of the victims lost his hold. Then a second man dropped. Miraculously, the third sailor, Bud Cowart, hung on for almost 2 hours, 2,000 feet above the ground, until he could be pulled up into the Akron and safety.
Her sister ship, the USS Macon, would also suffer damage and eventually crash in 1935. On April 20th, 1934, the ship suffered minor damage thanks to our good friend, the weather. This was fixed except for some reinforced metal because the mechanics were like, we don't have to reinforce this metal piece. It'll all be fine. Nobody will die. In February of 1935, the biggest "your actions have consequences" moment of all time happened. The ship was downed thanks to the ship hitting a storm. The wind collapsed the aforementioned metal piece, disintegrating the tail fin and destroying the aircraft. The wreckage would not be found until 1991. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you liked it. One of you, who is hopefully watching, said I should try to cover more unique topics to stand out more, so that's what I'm doing. As always, the sources are in the description, and once again, thank you for watching. This has been Playhouse Films.